Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. And remember, if you find yourself sitting on a comma in your life, you can also talk to me without a microphone. To explore coaching with me and getting off the comma in your own life, check out my information and book a call with me at offthecomma.com. And I'm also doing something different. I'm curating my own sponsor community, local businesses and professionals who I handpick and who align with our vision here. Be sure to check them out, learn more about them on my website and my YouTube channel. In the meantime, let's get into this week's conversation. Have you thought about becoming a professional life coach? Let's talk about transformation and coach training. I attended Transformative Coaching Essentials, a one-year coach training program based in Sacramento, hosted by McLaren Coaching. This one-year intensive program is truly life-changing. If you've thought about starting a coaching business, becoming a better leader, improving relationships, or just want personal growth and change, then I recommend you talk to Cammie McLaren about TCE. The next program starts on July 27th, 2024. Sign up now and mention this ad to get $250 off your tuition. Learn more at mclarencoaching.com/coach-training. That's McLaren, MCLAREN. Better yet, you can email Cammie, that's CAMI, at mclarencoaching.com, or you can also contact me, and I'm happy to talk to you about my transformative experience with TCE and how it can change your life too. Welcome back to another episode of Off the Comma. And this week, I'm really, really excited to talk to Louisa Fryer. She is one of my friends. I say newer friends, but we're now past a year since we met, but she's one of my new friends from the United Kingdom. And we met when I had the opportunity to go to London last year for my sober coach training. And we have stayed in touch since then. We got to spend some time together in October. And so I'm just really excited because of the story. I don't know the details, but I know a little bit about the story that Louisa is going to be sharing with us today. And I know it's going to resonate for so many folks, and as it does for me. But I'm going to stop rambling. Louisa, it's so good to have you here. Tell us how would you like to be known, and what would you like folks to know about you?
So how would I like to be known? I would say I'm intuitive, spiritual, creative, and I'd like to think I'm quite a productive person. In fact, a lot of my friends refer to me as Lou Gets It Done. So if I say I'm going to do something, I usually do it well. And in terms of what I do in my time, I'm transitioning careers at the moment. I'm training to be an executive coach. I'm a hypnotherapist as well, which is something I'm passionate about. And I am a consultant. So I support, purpose-driven businesses do cool stuff for their people around the leadership development, culture, engagement space. So that's me.
Nice.
Yeah.
We have those things in common. And what I notice about you, from what you've shared so far, and of course, what I already knew about you, is that all of these diverse types of work that you do and all these different pursuits that you're involved in, they all kind of center around people, helping people get what they want. It seems, you tell me.
Yeah, it is. And I think, when you think like the meta purpose, what's the thing that I really, really like doing? I know it's going to sound a bit out there, but I really like to raise consciousness in people. I like to help people become more aware and more enlightened. Ultimately, is what I really enjoy doing.
Why is that important to you?
I think that we spend a lot of time in our lives feeling lower than we need to feel. We absorb more negative feeling than we need to absorb, and I think that we can spend a lot of our time being quite unconscious to that. I just think that's a really sad waste of time. Like, why feel negative? Why not just feel more positive? If you could choose, you'd feel more positive. So choose that. And so just to help people shift their energy upwards, and be more effective, create more ripple effects through the conversations they're having in the workplace or in themselves with hypnotherapy or within a coaching experience. So yeah, I think raising consciousness overall is the thing that I'm quite drawn to doing, and I've always been drawn to doing. And you just do it in different ways and filter it in different ways, whether it's through leadership development or learning and development or whatever it is in the workplace, or doing it through one-to-one work.
It sounds powerful, and again, it just reinforces this sense of connection between you and others. So I'm looking forward to hearing how that shapes out in the story that you're going to be sharing with us. Before we get started, obviously you haven't shared with me the details of what you're going to be talking about, and we're going to be going through the same 5 questions that we do in every episode. But I always like to start with this question for my guests: is, as you think about the conversation ahead, the next 45 minutes or so, what intention would you have for yourself?
This is the first time that I'm kind of talking about this stuff. And so my intention for myself is to have compassion for myself and what I'm sharing, to experience what it feels like to talk about this. So yeah, thank you for being the first person to hear all of this stuff. I mean, I even was going to rehearse some of this stuff with a friend, but I decided not to because I just wanted to see what happens, off the cuff.
I so appreciate that, and I acknowledge that for you, this being the first time that you're telling the story. I'm so glad you chose not to rehearse it, and not because that's the right or wrong thing to do, but my experience has been with guests on this podcast is that the story really will tell itself. And I've had many folks share with me, oh, I kind of prepared a mind map, or I scripted some things or whatever, and then it ends up not being what comes out. So yeah, let it flow. Let the story tell itself. My intention, Louisa, is to create a space for you to be able to do this and to accomplish your intention. And as it always is that in you showing up today and telling this story for the first time and allowing yourself to experience what it feels like, that it will connect with other people out there. There will be people who needed to hear your story today, and it will resonate with them. It will make them feel a little bit more connected and a little bit less alone. And at the best, it will inspire them and empower them to take the next steps for themselves and maybe treat themselves a little bit kinder and other people in their lives a little bit kinder.
Yeah, and that's ultimately why I decided to do this.
Nice. Well, let's get into it. Let's start with the first question. And Louisa, the first question is, where have you found yourself sitting on a comma in your life?
So for most of my adult life, I'd say, I was sitting on a comma, and that comma was of not feeling good enough, on really not feeling good enough, feeling very deeply insecure, with feelings of shame and rejection. That was always, at the bottom, really sort of running the show. And the reason for that was because I from sort of being a teenager, my relationship with my father declined, and I'm now estranged from my father. So, and that was really tough because I'm an only child. I was daddy's girl, and used to spend all of my time with my dad, when he was around. So we used to have this converted attic, the top of our house was a room. We converted it, and that was like the space that he had his musical instruments and all his stuff there. He's a musician. And I'd have my computer with my Spectrum ZX Plus, if you remember those, that really old school computer with the light pen. And we used to have a dartboard, and we just used to spend a lot of time together in the attic, and he'd do his thing and I'd be around doing my thing, or we would go and, I don't know, go cycling together, go swimming, play badminton together in the garden. And my mum was around, but my mum was very productive around the house. So she she's Portuguese and, an amazing cook. So she would cook these amazing meals. And my friends still comment on my mum's food. They reminisce about it. So my mum was the caregiver, I'd say. And my dad was the person that I'd have more fun with and hang out with. So it was really tough when the relationship between them kind of came to an end when I was a teenager. His head was turned, and he decided to leave my mum and I, and pursue other relationships. And he married, and then he married again. And during that time, I saw less and less of him. And there were times when I was let down. He'd say he'd come and see me. He didn't turn up. Some moments like that. And over the years of being a teenager into my 20s, there was a lot of sadness as that relationship really kind of just declined, when he definitely went into his third marriage. So my mum being the first, and then now with his current wife, that's really sort of tethered the relationship. And that's been really, really difficult. It was really hard. So feelings of worthiness, self-esteem, all of those things. And what that led into was kind of drinking, being quite reckless, getting into debt. Some quite kind of unsupportive behaviors as I was trying to seek comfort. It's almost like your parents are, they kind of operate like, I sort of see it like they're two taps, your mum and your dad. And so my mum was always on, she's always there flowing all the stuff that she flowed. And then my dad was there flowing all the stuff that he flowed. And so I got a lot from both of them. And then my dad's tap just slowly starts turning off. And, over a 10-year period is then shut off permanently. But yet the need I have is still to have, the stuff coming out the tap. Right. So it was really hard. And I think the challenge when you're a teenager is, despite having a lot of confidence, you don't have a lot of life experience, and your emotional intelligence is still forming. And, there's studies that say that, the human brain doesn't actually fully stop developing until you're in your mid-20s. So it was difficult being the only child where I was feeling what I was feeling, yet not able to kind of really label and process what I was feeling. And I think my dad particularly perhaps wanting me to be more adult about it, and be okay, like, it's okay. You've had a good 10 years from me. I'm going to go off and do this now. That's all right. Hang in there. You'll be okay. That kind of behavior and that kind of
May
attitude.
I ask a question? I mean, every now and then I'll step in, for clarification. So I'm definitely, first of all, I just want to acknowledge how difficult this sounds and how heavy this sounds, because those are important relationships in anyone's life, and clearly important relationships in your life, and this relationship with your dad, as you've described. And what I'm hearing is, not only did the tap shut off, and so now that flow's not there, that relationship isn't there anymore, but I'm getting the sense that there's no clarity around why.
The reason why. So the first the marriage after my mum was with a lady who she was really remarkable, actually. In the end, I liked her a lot. I think I struggled when they first got together, but then I was a young girl, going into my dad's new life with this new woman. It was a bit of a weird experience for me. I wasn't prepared for it. But actually, she was really, really spiritual, and she really opened up my spiritual inquiry around Buddhism. She herself was quite into Sai Baba, and she'd go off to India and do all of that stuff. But I really liked her, and I was quite sad when they split up. And then he met his third wife, who he's with now, who is a German lady. He lives in Germany now, and I think she feels insecure about him having a relationship with me. I don't think she likes the idea of us being in contact. So it's like he made a choice. He made a choice to be with her and not have contact with me, to keep the peace, really, and to keep things simple and peaceful in his own life. And just for the record, like, I don't now. I feel nothing but compassion for him, for his wife, for the situation. I think it's sad in many ways that they feel that way and that she feels that way. But I'm not responsible for that either. So
yeah. And yet, by the same token, you're right, because that's that situation over there. I may or may not be able to control, but what's really kind of important here is how it has affected you and what it's created for you, right?
Yeah.
So you said, before I asked the question and you were kind of sharing a little bit about the why, you said, okay, so he told me to be adult about it, and you got a good 10 years, and I feel like I interrupted your story. Continue from there.
Yeah. So as I creep into my 20s, I always look back on this and I think, like, it's almost like my life was in two parallels. There was kind of like I don't know, there's like the good you in you, and then the sort of reckless you in you, or the damaged part of you. So as my dad is exiting my life, I'm on the track of going to work, and the part of me that's the wiser part of me, if you like, was doing really good work. I landed on my feet. I worked for great companies with great managers, and I really enjoyed being in the workplace. It gave me structure. I got positive strokes from people. I felt good about who I was in work. I liked the identity of myself in the workplace, and so I really enjoyed work. At the same time, the damaged part of me was drinking a lot after work, going out at the weekends, being reckless, getting into quite big amounts of debt, trying to keep up with my friends, and living beyond my means. My mum and I, when I was younger, our relationship was a little bit turbulent, as often they are between mums and daughters. So I'd moved out a couple of times and moved back in again, and all of that stuff was going on. And so I was quite derailed. So the wiser part in me, at times it was like I went into Buddhism quite deeply. I studied that quite deeply. I did my Reiki training and went down that road. And whilst I was on that road, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't partying, I wasn't doing any of that stuff. But then I would flip over, and it was like I'd go, switch over and start drinking and being reckless, and getting myself caught up with, I don't know, getting obsessed with men. Like, I was so insecure about who I was, and found being in relationships really difficult. I was very needy, and I was attracting avoidant men. Of course I was. So I had all of that kind of dynamic going on in my 20s and into my 30s.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
But I don't want to stop your flow if you're
No,
you're
go for it. No, ask me a question.
You use these terms. It's fascinating to me. I love how descriptive you are about your experiences. The damaged part of me and the wiser part of me. I'm curious, how do I want to ask this question? What would you describe as the damage for the damaged part of you? And then what was the wiser part of you pursuing when it was looking into Buddhism and these other kind of practices and spirituality? So what you've described what happened in your life, but what do you think the damage was, and what were you pursuing?
I think that the damage was not having, my esteem was really low. I didn't have high regard for myself. I didn't have boundaries for myself. I didn't know how to get my needs met in a healthy way. I felt rejected. I felt, I just felt so squeezed out of my dad's life. In fact, both times he got married, I was never invited. I didn't even know he got married the third time. I sort of found that out, so things like that. It's like, I just felt there's something deeply wrong with me. There's something deeply wrong with me. And I need to, drinking and doing all of that stuff was a way of making myself feel that I was okay.
It also seems like, and tell me if this is wrong, but because you made such a point of he said be an adult about it, and it seems like that's exactly what you did, because isn't that what adults in our society do? They go off and they spend money and they drink and they socialize and get in relationships. It seems like in an interesting sort of way, you jumped right into, okay, fine, I'll be an adult then.
Yeah. I had never thought of it that way. Yeah, I did. I did my best to get on with it, and stand on my own 2 feet very quickly. I didn't go to university because I didn't have the financial safety to do it, although I did manage to get myself in debt. So I could have gone to university in the end, turns out. But And so it was a really difficult time. And I think the thing about the part that the good part, if you like, I suppose, is just there is a deeper part of everyone, I think, that is the sort of the wiser part of you, the part that really knows what's best for you. And I don't know, your higher power, whatever you want to call it, your own internal spiritual guide or whatever it might be. And so there was always that part of me that was, I don't know, just leaping onto opportunities in the workplace, leaping onto, I found myself going into learning and development, and I loved it because it meant that I could learn, and I loved learning, and I loved personal development. So that was just gold for me, and it was probably one of the things that have helped me really transition and change my life, because I think I was able to get myself out of that funk by learning about myself through doing, I know MBTI or all the different things you do in that world. You constantly learn about yourself and constantly make peace with yourself. I spent a lot of time with a therapist. I had 2 amazing therapists, one in my 20s called Ula, and one in my 30s called Anne, who's no longer with us. And I was with Anne for years, and it was the best investment in myself I could have made. And I really struggled with money when I was younger, but I always found a way to pay for those sessions. Those sessions were sacred to me. And that was my space to really be vulnerable about how I really felt. And I think in many ways, a therapist reparents you and puts you back together again in a way that, you don't get with an actual parent or a friend. And so that was a very powerful experience, being with Anne and Ula earlier on, but with Anne for many years in my 30s.
It sounds like the therapist had an important role for you, and there's this element of seeking that I'm seeing come up or hearing you describe, in the pursuits of the, kind of the reckless part, as you describe, and then also the wiser part. Both parts are seeking different ways in different things, but still seeking.
I was always seeking. And I think that's, you sort of, I was seeking, I was just seeking myself, I think. I think I was looking for validation. And, I think working in the corporate space was a really, really healthy thing for me to have done, because it gave me a structure, it gave me a home, it gave me nice people to work with. I've been so blessed with amazing leaders that have supported me and believed in me more than I believed in myself a lot of the time. And there just comes a point when, you just reevaluate yourself and reevaluate things. And there came a point, I guess, in my probably in my 40s, maybe a couple of years ago, when I was really struggling at work with something. And I just broke down into tears. I got off a call and I broke down into tears on my own and just was saying to myself, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I feel good about myself, about what I'm doing right now? Why can't I get this together in myself? Why do I feel like this? And a voice inside was like, because your dad doesn't love you. And this was the thing that I needed to really squash. So I went off and did some more stuff, which I actually think helped in the end. It's just been a very difficult, I think the thing is, you know, I made my dad's exit. I made that mean that I wasn't good enough. And I carried that for 20 years. I carried that. And I could have made it mean a ton of different things that would have been far more empowering. But for whatever reason, that's what I made it mean. And I was really, I could not break away from that ultimately. And that was the underpinning reason for feeling insecure, feeling rejected, feeling shame.
When you kind of look back at this comma that you've been describing to us, you know, kind of overall, what did sitting on this comma create for you? You've shared a little bit, and I think, you know, your answers so far to the first question and the answer to this one are all going to flow. You'll go back and forth, but what would you say this experience created for you?
I think that it's kind of why I'm ready to talk about it now and be of service to people who are in a similar situation, because looking back now, what I realized it created was it was like I was going on in my life with my foot on the accelerator and on the brake at the same time. Do you know what I mean? So it's like I'm trying to move forward in my life, but I keep slamming the brake down. And it just slowed me down. It made me play small as well. And it meant that my getting to self-belief and self-confidence took me a very, very long time. It took me far longer than it needed to. Far longer than it needed to. Yeah.
What makes you say that? Far longer than it needed to?
Because I just didn't have any. I didn't have any, self-belief I was always doubting myself. Always highly critical of myself, and more than I needed to be, because I never felt good enough. And when you do these coaching courses, you learn, and you covered transaction analysis years ago, and then it came back up again on this course I was doing, and it was a really good refresher and a reminder on the drivers. And I've got like a be perfect driver, and so this sort of forever chasing perfection that doesn't exist was kind of really prevalent in most of my working life, and I think that got in the way of me, being more daring, being more brave, taking bigger leaps in my career at the time. Yeah, so I think that's kind of what it cost me, really, in many ways.
It's interesting. These words that you share are so descriptive, and from doubting myself to critical to self-belief, negative self-belief, not feeling good enough, and then even shame, right? So many people can relate with this. And then you bring in this layer of perfectionism that has served you in a way, right? This pursuit of excellence in your career and doing good things, and you didn't use these words, but I'm assuming recognition and job well done, and high esteem amongst your coworkers and peers, and yet this perfectionism thing is interesting, right? Like what other roles did this perfectionist part of you play in all of this?
To an extent, still the role that it plays now. Like, I like things to be done in a certain way. I have high standards, so there are things that Be Perfect does do for you that I think is not to be kicked out the door completely. But I think it can mean that it just makes it harder for you to be kind to yourself sometimes, I think, in particularly in the workplace. And generally, actually, now, but I think now I'm kinder to myself and more okay with it being less Doesn't need to be perfect,
Mm-hmm. Well, it definitely sounds like, through the seeking and the work that you've been doing, and this internal work, whether it be with therapists or these courses and spiritual practices, the relationship with that perfect side of you seems to have evolved and changed over time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I think, you just get older, and I think there is a little bit about just life teaches you over time. But yeah, I just feel like I wasted a lot of time in anxiety when I didn't need to be.
Hmm. That's the second time you've mentioned wasting time. So let me transition to the third question. You can explore that further, or whatever else really comes up. When you look back at this, what have you learned about yourself as a result of sitting on this comma?
That I was the common denominator the whole time. Like I was always good enough. I was always good enough. And it I wasted time not connecting to that soon enough.
Hmm.
I mean, there's so many like points, and when I look back of like how there's so many points of evidence of how good enough I was, and yet I could never connect to it. I could never see and see what other people saw. It was like a compliment would go over my head. It was like I, I just wouldn't absorb it.
Hmm.
It would just pass me by completely. I would not know how to hold a compliment.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Right. And so I just want to acknowledge you, because something you just said is so, I think, important for all of us to hear and hear over and over and over again. Right. There's this awareness in you that the reality was that you were good enough and that you did get compliments and praise, but there was a belief that that wasn't for you. Right. And it's so interesting because you've described the parts of you before that were essentially pursuing the recognition, the belonging, the acceptance,
Yeah,
and so forth. And yet when it would show up in the form of a compliment, you
yeah.
you
I
couldn't,
couldn't take it.
pursuing the thing that you wouldn't hold on to.
Yeah,
I'm speaking very generally. You take that where you would like to.
yeah. No, it's exactly how it was. It was and the reason why is because I'm not good enough because Dad doesn't love me anymore.
Hmm.
I'm rejected. And that fundamentally was the bottom line. And I know that's true because even as I'm sitting here saying that, I can feel the emotion of it coming up. I can
Hmm.
feel, that was the inner sentence that was going on, whether I consciously recognized it or unconsciously, like it was, that was the thing that was going on. And I know that because that
Hmm.
time when I was in my office and broke down, that's the voice that came to me. And I just, like, I've always known that this has been the script that
Hmm.
has been running the show. Yeah.
You said you feel it. Where do you feel it? I'm just curious. When that voice shows up and you said, I can feel it in my body, where are you feeling it?
I feel it kind of like in my, I don't know, my stomach coming up to my chest, perhaps feels like a feeling of like, I just know that that's how I felt. That was, yeah, feeling rejected, feeling like I wasn't good enough.
Hmm.
Dad made a different choice. He didn't choose me. He chose someone else. He chose a different life, and I'm not in it. He's done with me.
Hmm.
All of those things, all of that stuff, the feelings that behind that, that's what it was.
Sure. Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, that's, I think, so powerful about sharing these stories is we could unpack, anyone could work with you, right? Or if you chose to unpack different parts of this and so forth. But at the end of the day, that is the feeling. That's the belief. That's there, right? You can intellectually know other things about this situation and have that feeling too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing from you.
And that's exactly how it was. That's
Yeah.
exactly how it was. And it took me a long time to change the belief, and lose the energy around it, the energy and the frequency of that belief, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Because I always think,
Well,
yeah, that was something that probably leaked a lot, through me in ways that I would be self-deprecating or whatever it might be, was always because that belief was actually quite alive, and it was always alive, despite what I knew, despite what I would stand up and deliver or whatever, that was always the thing that was deep down inside. So anything coming at me was compliments was very difficult to take on.
Then that takes us to the next question, because now I'm curious what changed for you as a result, because you've talked about how, a little bit of it is getting older in life and learning things, and yet you're sharing this belief that it was been such a big part of your life and such a heavy thing to carry, and has had a big influence on all these parts of your life. And what I believe I'm hearing you say, but that's not as much the case today.
Yeah. So
and if so, what changed? Yeah.
What changed? The turning points. I think the turning points they came when I sort of turned 40. I think I was in a relationship with somebody who was lovely, and I found that he was drinking a lot, and subsequently I was drinking a lot, and when I got into my 40s, I really started feeling and reflecting and thinking about who I was and who did I want to become. And I guess that, going back to that idea of, the wise me and then the reckless me, I started really identifying with wanting to really be just the wise me. What would just being the wise me look like? And what is it that I need to, how can I step into that more? So I made some changes. I came out of that relationship, and I started exploring my relationship with alcohol. That was a massive turning point. And I think by making that decision to turn alcohol off meant that what I was actually doing was that I was choosing me. I was choosing the wise me. I was choosing it was like, I remember thinking, who I know I can be in my mind isn't who I'm being in my day. There's this discrepancy between the person I know I can become, and I know that's in me, and I know all this stuff, and I know that I'm deserving of being this woman that I've got in my mind, and I want to step into that. I want to choose that. But yet my life right now is revolving around alcohol, and what that does is perpetuates the negative feelings. It keeps alive the insecurity, the feeling of rejection. How many times have I got really drunk and then just been crying crying over my dad, crying over whatever, and getting unnecessary, getting completely unnecessary. And when you just sort of keep doing it, and you're like, all of a sudden you just become aware, and when you see something, you can't unsee it. And I had to make a choice. And so that was a turning point, turning off alcohol and stepping into choosing me, choosing the real me, was a really, really fundamental moment. And then there were moments after that where that belief of I'm not good enough really started spinning on its head. And they were things at work. My last company that I was working for, I found that I had some really nice opportunities to build up again, and the belief kind of crumbled when I also did some shamanic work as well, which was surprising. I didn't see that coming. So that came in the form of two episodes, 2 moments of doing some shamanic work, and I've never really spent time in that space in my life before. I was more like Reiki, Buddhism was my spiritual stuff, law of attraction. Yeah, I love that. But the shamanic thing just came, and I followed it. I did it. And that really cracked open some of the energy in the belief. And I found that the combination of choosing me, choosing stepping into being the person I wanted to be, who didn't have that belief, who believed that she is good enough. So stepping into the belief, stepping into the behaviors of the belief, and then doing the shamanic work and some stuff going on around me, the practical stuff in the workplace, seemed to kind of help me just reshape and reform and become more secure in myself. And I think that's the big thing. Going from insecure to secure is the big shift.
And it's also, this so resonates with me, and I love what you've just shared in this, because what I'm noticing, and you tell me what you think of this, or if it's off base, because I think there's a lot of people who they have some kind of a thing that they hold on to in life. It might be an addiction. It might be alcohol. It might be drugs. It might be sex, whatever. So they believe that when they give these things up, that the problems go away. And what you've just shown us is that you recognize that alcohol couldn't be in this relationship anymore. You couldn't have a relationship with alcohol anymore. And and that you chose yourself, and you set aside the alcohol, and yet this belief resurfaced again. So it didn't go away with the quitting drinking. But what's interesting, what I see in your story is that, oh gosh, this is so complicated, or to try to explain. These negative beliefs didn't go away with alcohol, but once you were no longer under the influence or using alcohol, now the problem comes back, and you're not only able to kind of attack it from a clear-headed point of view, but it's almost like the universe said, now let's see if you really have the chops to address the issue, right? Like, it really wasn't about the alcohol. The alcohol was just a thing that you did. But now it's like, let's see if you can come at this problem. I'll use the word problem from an entirely different point of view, an entirely different mindset. And you did.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it invites, when you stop drinking, it it is quite surprising, really, the impact it has. And I think people underestimate, because I think a lot of people kind of like they drink periodically and then they don't drink and then they drink periodically. So they sort of think that the moments, the few days of not drinking, that's, and they feel good, they feel kind of reset again. That's how it feels when you don't drink for a long time. And that's not true. When you don't drink for a long time, the benefits accumulate. So to your point, with that kind of out of the way, it meant that I was choosing self-care. I was choosing, going into nature more, eating really lovely food with my friends, spending time with people that actually I felt more connected to spiritually, doing things with my time that really gave me, a sense of fulfillment. And all of those things helped me believe the new belief that I was good enough. So it was quite, it's why it was such a fundamental moment of doing that and taking that out of my life. That was it was a significant turning point. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what else comes up for me is was it a new belief, or was it returning to the original belief?
Possibly. Yeah, possibly.
Because you described yourself as a little girl in the attic and having the time with your dad and your mom. Like, when you were describing the early and original parts of your story, the original Louisa didn't describe having these other beliefs, these negative beliefs, or these doubt and so forth. That's me interjecting my own stuff into it. But is it really a new belief, or are you just returning to the original one?
Yeah, possibly returning to a belief that I had in my childhood of just being good enough and being, worthy of things that I like doing and all of that stuff. So I think, they were some practical turning points and spiritual turning points that really helped me get into being and feeling secure. And amazing things happen when you do. You attract new people into your life. I've attracted a wonderful new partner who I live with now. And if you'd have told me 20 years ago, this will happen, you'll be living here, you'll be with this person, you'll be making these plans, you'll be doing this with your life, you'll have that car, you won't be in debt. If you'd have told me all of that, I wouldn't have believed you. I just wouldn't have believed you.
Amazing. I love every bit of this story, and I so appreciate you sharing this with us, because it really, there's so many layers to your story. And what I'm hearing really central and fundamental in your story is that the life situations really impacted your belief. You went into a place of really negative self-belief and have come to a place of saying, okay, no, I need to choose myself. I need to reset that belief. And you've come back into a place of having positive self-esteem and believing in yourself. What else would you say about that?
Yeah, totally. I feel like I feel like my cup's full and I'm ready to give back. And I really want to help people who are on the path that I've been on, with the same context or similar context. Because I know what it feels like to feel that way about a parent, and particularly, the father-daughter dynamic. And I'm really keen to help people not spend 20 years learning. I've spent 20 years learning.
Mm,
Um, so it's nice to come to a point in your life when you can think about, what do you really want to, what really sparks your joy, and what legacy do you want to leave, and how do you want to spend your time, and what really makes you feel, it's good work, well done.
mhm.
And so for now, I've decided to come out of the corporate world. It's really held me, and I've worked with some amazing leaders, and a long list I couldn't take up the rest of this podcast to call them all out. But for now, I've decided to come out of it and figure out, and get to know me again outside of the corporate world, and
Mm.
and think about how I can work and give back to the community, give back to society, in a way that feels more meaningful, for now.
Right. Well, I feel like you may have already answered this last question, but I'll ask it in case there's anything else you'll add. Louisa, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
So, like I said, I'm finding a new way. I'm training to be a coach. I'm wanting to bring hypnotherapy into that, and I love working with people with hypnotherapy. It's been so powerful for me, over the years. It's really been helpful, and I think we all have this gift of our unconscious mind, and to learn how to use it, with hypnosis, is something, is a resource that I believe everyone should have access to, and they do. I mean, marketeers know this, but to use it for
Hmm.
you, to use it for your own good, and that links into NLP too. I think NLP is pretty good, um, and yeah, I think, I have plans to write a book, to help. I really want to write the book that I needed when I was younger,
Mm.
just to consolidate the things that really help, and help fast track you to security in yourself, so that you can enjoy life. I mean, that's the point of it, to feel good. And when you feel good, you attract good back into your life. And that's the point. The more time, and this is going back to the whole raising consciousness thing. That I think the more time we can elevate our feelings upwards and feel secure in ourselves and feel happy, we attract more of the same back into our world, and just wonderful things happen. And I'm so aligned with that now, and I guess I have this burning desire to help other people connect with that too, and particularly people
Mm.
who've, like I said, have had similar background to me.
Yeah. Oh, I can definitely see that. I can hear that. And I hear, these descriptions that you started the conversation with coming through in all of this. And I'm excited to be here observing along the journey and me personally being able to get updates in real time on this and I do check-ins with podcast guests kind of down the road, so at some point we might be having a conversation about this book that you're talking about writing
Yes,
too.
yes, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, we will. Excellent.
Nice. Louisa, as you look back on the conversation now, what would you acknowledge yourself for?
I'm going to acknowledge myself for being quite articulate today. Earlier on, when I was throwing the ball for my little guest friend here, I was thinking, oh gosh, am I going to be bumbling my way through this and slipping and tripping over my words? But actually, I think I heard that I was actually quite articulate, and I'm going to honor that. You know, this is the first time I've kind of talked about this stuff in this way. And I feel like I did all right.
Yeah. Well, we're so grateful for you sharing the story. And there's just so much in here that I think folks are going to connect with. So,
I hope so.
speaking of connection, Louisa, tell us if folks wanted to contact you or look you up and learn more about you, where could they find you? And we'll have all those links in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So I have my website, which is in the show notes. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I'm on Instagram.
Nice. Nice. Awesome. And then one other thing that we do here on the podcast as well is because it's part of your story, and it's also an important part of what we want to represent here, what I want to represent with the podcast. And that's being able to acknowledge those who are important to you, but maybe not here, giving a boost or a little extra visibility to folks that are important to you. So we call it acknowledgments, and that could be a cause or an organization or someone who's close to you, or maybe another creator that you just want to shine a light on. Who would you like to acknowledge?
Who would I like to acknowledge? Okay, so firstly, someone quite more personal. My friend and graphic designer, Emily Carey. She has really helped me to create, imagery that I feel reflects my personality and I get really great feedback on. And she's starting out as a graphic designer. So Emily Carey is one shout out. Secondly, I'd like to shout out to a brilliant coaching training business that I'm currently doing my ILM 7 with, which is In Good Company, which is run by two amazing, inspiring women who set that up. And yeah, I've had a great experience from that training course and met some lovely people as well. And then lastly, somebody who a lot of people would have heard of, a guy called Joe Dispenza, who is a thought leader around quantum physics and the idea of quantum physics, mindfulness, neuroscience, how to really attract and work with the law of attraction in a way that is quite scientific. I really like his work, his meditations, his books. He did a brilliant podcast with Stephen Bartlett, which will also be in the show notes.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, thank you for sharing that and sharing of yourself and sharing your story today. It personally resonates with me. You and I are going to have some offline conversations, I know, about this as well.
Yeah.
And just really excited to see where this goes next for you. And we will be following your story very closely.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks for the opportunity. And I hope people have enjoyed listening.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a good weekend. And I will be talking to you very soon.
Okay, thank you. Speak soon.
What an honor it is for me to witness these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way too. Think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. Surprises can reveal themselves to you when you do this. And if you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. Let's spread the word. Let's continue to build connection. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast here on this platform and social media at Off the Comma, and feel free to comment and interact with these posts and episodes. Check out my website for workshops, events, and my sponsor community. I'm covering the costs of production by curating my own sponsors who align with our vision. Be sure to check them out. They're all powerful people and businesses. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.